Hello and welcome to our School at Home class in English grade 11. We are in the first quarter of our set of lessons and I hope everybody will delight in learning today with lesson number 4, Fiction and Creative Nonfiction. Lesson, we discussed poetry, which we said as the oldest form of art, and the other one was hyperpoetry, which is considered the new literary genre in the 21st century literature. Today, we will discuss another literary genre, the fiction and creative nonfiction. But before we proceed, let me ask you to do a recap activity. To review our previous lesson, do this. Rearrange the letters to form the correct word and write it on the space provided after its meaning below. You may pause the video as you answer. Alright, let's see your answers. Yes, the correct words are hyperpoetry, poetry, theme, and stanza. Now, this time, find the meaning of these words. Number 1. An element of poetry which refers to the overall message of the poem that may be stated directly or indirectly. Number 2. Also called as cyber poetry, that uses computer screen as a medium rather than the printed page. Number 3. An important structure of poetry as a group of lines in a poem. And number 4, a type of literature that usually follows a certain rule like rhyme and meter. Write your answer on your notebook. Again, you may pause the video for you to answer. Let's check your answer. If your answer in number 1 is theme, you are correct. In number 2 is hyper poetry. Number 3 is stanza. And for number 4 is poetry. I think you are ready now to our next topic. Let us discuss first fiction. One of the Filipinos' staple entertainment is a good dramatic teleserye story on TV. They can easily find themselves in one of the characters whom they watch, whether it be the optimistic poor little girl who is tormented by evil relatives, or a witty evil antagonist who has everything but can never be optimistic as the protagonist. One of the most popular telenovela in Philippine television was Mara Clara. Did you watch this telenovela from the original version up to the remake? No matter how much Filipinos can relate and see their own situations in any popular teleserye on TV, the fact is that these teleserye are all products of fiction. Fiction has been derived from the Latin word fictus, which means to form. It refers to a narrative in prose like novels, short stories, and also novellas, which base on author's imagination, though the stories may resemble reality, but it is purely circumstantial. Fiction is one of the two branches of literature. The other one is nonfiction. Fiction is based on fabricated stories and characters. It may be based on stories from actual historical events, though fictitious characters are presented in a fictitious setting. To further understand the meaning of fictions and its difference to other literary genres, it's important also to know its elements. There are at least 6 basic elements of fiction. First is characters. Characters are the people or animals who do the action in the story. The character of the story is the one you can relate with, converse with, and listen with. Characters may undergo several changes as the story progresses. This makes you as reader will be interested or disinterested. The character may stand as kind, rich or poor, bratty, confusing, annoying, and so on. An English novelist, E.M. Forster, identified that characters can be either flat or round. Flat character is the one who has only one or two character traits, for example, a bad guy, while round character has many character traits and play important roles or the main character. Other characters can also be described as static or dynamic. A static character stays the same throughout the story, while dynamic, also called developing, means the character changes. The change may be small or large as the story progresses. The second element is setting. Setting is where and when the story happened. The setting can be also the main force that the characters encounter, such as flood or earthquake. Third is plot. Plot is the sequence of the events in the story. It follows a particular structure called Freytag's pyramid. This structure was identified by Gustav Freytag, a German playwright and novelist who lived sometimes in 1800s. Here is the example figure of Freytag's pyramid. We will begin from exposition. Exposition is an introduction to the characters, setting, and the main conflict of the story. Then the rising action is the events leading up to conflict that the characters encounter. The climax, as you can see, it is on the peak of the mountain-like figure or the pyramid itself. It is the turning point of the story, a single event with the greatest intensity and uncertainty which the main character faces. Then, the following action, the events that unfold the climax. The story begins to slow down and work towards its end. And the last is the so-called denouement, or the resolution that provides closure to the story. The next element is conflict. Conflict is defined as any struggle between two entities. Usually, the protagonist or the main character encounters a conflict with the antagonist. The conflict may be character versus character, character versus nature or natural forces, character versus society or culture, character versus God, and character versus himself or herself. The fifth one is point of view. Point of view is the lens that the author provides its readers so that they will see the story in the particular view or angle. The story is generally told in one or two points of views, the first person point of view and the third person point of view. The first person point of view means that the narrator is in the story. The narrator may be the protagonist or the main character telling the events he or she personally experiencing, while the third person point of view means that the narrator is outside the story and relating the experiences of a character in the story, as it uses personal pronouns like I, me, we, us, and are, which makes the reader as if they are the character. Third-person point of view can be done in two ways. First is the third person limited and the third person omniscient. The third person limited means the narrator limits himself by being in one's character's thoughts, while the third person omniscient means the narrator has unlimited ability to be in various characters' thoughts and uses the pronouns he, she, it, him, her, his, they, them, and theirs, which removes the readers from the story. The last element is theme. Theme is the central idea or insight about life or human behavior that the story reveals, though in most stories it is not stated directly. Instead, it is revealed to us by the characters' experiences. Here are some examples of fiction. An example short story, The God Stealer by F. Sionil Jose, and The Noli Me Tangere, an example novel by our very own Jose Rizal, and novellas titled Three Filipina Women. Now, let's proceed to the next literary genre, which is creative nonfiction. In Philippine literature, essay was the most popular genre. Essay was also known as creative nonfiction and often defined as a short piece of writing on a particular subject. Sometimes it is also defined as an account of personal, historical, and academic events. According to Cristina Pantoja Hidalgo, before, the essay and nonfiction narrative were not same or equal to poetry, drama, novels, and short stories, for the reason that anyone can write an essay. During a Spanish period, essays had been used as political treatises by Filipino writers through newspapers, a venue of nonfiction writers even today. Even before the Japanese occupation, we already have the so-called essay. Most of these essays were published in newspapers and magazines. The first book of essay in English written by a Filipino author, Alfredo Gonzalez, was entitled The Call of the Heights. Short story or flash fiction that also a fiction or essay in the Philippines were very prominent during American period. What is creative nonfiction? Creative nonfiction is a literary genre that presents factual stories well told. The word creative refers to the use of literary craft and literary techniques. Creative nonfiction can be a personal essay, memoir, autobiography, literary journalistic essay, travel writings, food writings, and profiles. For further understanding of creative nonfiction or CNF, let us discuss its elements. The elements of CNF are, first, fact. Fact is the accurate and authentic writing. It is not made up like fiction. The second one is extensive research. The writing must be based on research such as interview, personal experience, and most often an information gathered from a secondary research through books, magazines, and newspaper. The third element is reportage or reporting. The writer must be able to document an event or personal experiences. The fourth one is personal experience and personal opinion. Often, the writer includes personal experiences, feelings, thoughts, and opinions. For instance, when writing a personal essay or memoir. Another element of creative nonfiction or CNF is the explanation or exposition. Here, it is also important that the writer is required to explain the personal experience or topic to the reader. And of course, CNF should be in essay format. Creative nonfiction is often written in an essay format. For example, the personal essay, the literary journalistic essay, and brief essay. Aside from that, CNF should also have the literary elements. We said that CNF is a literature of fact, yet the writer applies many of the literary devices of fiction writing, such as storytelling or narration. The writer is the one telling his or her story. A good story should have an inciting incident, a goal, challenges and obstacles, a turning point and resolution of the story. Another element is, of course, character. Character is the major element of any story, whether it be human or animal. Characters bring life to the story, may it be fiction or non-fiction. Writers should think creatively with the development of the characters through actions, descriptions, and dialogues. And that is characterization. Characterizations can be done directly or indirectly. Another literary element is figurative language. Figurative language is the counterpart to descriptive imagery. Figurative language is an amazing way to describe a literary moment. It can take the form of metaphor. For example, the sunflower is a dazzling sun in midsummer, or in the form of simile. Vanessa's beauty is like a dazzling sunflower in midsummer. Plot is also one of the basic elements of every story. It refers to the actual events that take place within the bounds of your narrative. There are three related elements to consider in writing the plot: the scope, sequence, and pacing. Scope refers to the boundaries of plot. It answers the questions like where and when the story happens and what is its focus. Sequence is the order of the events. Like fiction, CNF also used and tried the Freytag's pyramid in structuring the plot of the story. And pacing determines how quickly the readers move through the story. It is the amount of time you dedicate to describing each event in the story. Like fiction, CNF also has point of view. Point of view is the perspective from which the story is told. Often, the writer uses the first person, I, in creative nonfiction. Dialogue are the conversations spoken between people. It is an important component of creative nonfiction. And of course, another literary elements that we need to see in CNF is theme. Theme is the central idea that we can weave from the essay or work and often reveals a universal truth. Here are the examples of creative nonfiction. An example autobiography, Rizal's own story of his life, written by himself, Dr. Jose Rizal, in 1918. And an example of memoir, written by Peter Hamero, Growing Up Brown, A Memories of a Filipino American. And travel writing by Jessica Zafra, Twisted Travels. And also biography of Imelda Romualdez Marcos, a biography by Kerema Polotan. Let me check your understanding of our lesson or discussion through this guided practice. Identify the given statement that refers to fiction or creative nonfiction. Write F if the statement refers to fiction and write C and F if the statement refers to creative nonfiction. You may answer this using a pen and a ball pen. You may pause the video as you answer if you wish to. Number 1. Extensive research is an important element in writing this literary genre. If your answer is C and F, you are correct. Number 2. The writer is required to explain the personal experiences or topic to the reader. Here, if your answer is C and F, again, you are correct. Number 3. It is based on fabricated stories and characters. If your answer is F, you are also correct. With this lesson, I want you to remember that no matter what kind of story we have heard or learned, we still get affected and sympathized to the people involved in a certain situation, whether it be fictitious or real events. Through different stories, we learn a lesson and makes reflection in our own lives. As a responsible, real individual in a real settings, it is our duty to take part and be involved in the community we are in. Be vigilant, be responsive, and have a community involvement, for we are real. To wrap up everything that we have discussed in this lesson, answer the WH questions to check your understanding. Answer the what, why, and how questions to summarize the lesson for today and connect it with your life. What are you learning? Why are you learning? How will you use it? Goodbye and see you in the next lesson.